I'm Steve Hackley. I'm here to talk to you guys today about keeping data and integrations in sync. And so what specifically I'm talking about is integrated environments. So when we've got your production platform and you're integrated with other applications out there, bringing those production environments, when you want to take the snapshot of that database and bring it down to like your staging environment or your dev environment, and then sync up those keys, those pointers to your other integrations, so that you don't lose that data, so you can keep things moving. So let's see. I sure wish I could debug this locally, right? We've all said this probably a million times. And at one point or another, we just don't have the data to do it in our own environment. Sometimes we're guilty of having to go into production and Rails console and have to get in there and do things. So we want to, why would we want to do this? Maybe we want to. Hold on a second. All right, so integrated systems, they're hard to debug, right? The problem is, as developers, we want production data in our environment. We want to have that, in our region. And these pointers to these other systems, like foreign keys, they're really environment specific. So when we pull the production data down, the pointers are gone. They don't point to anything, that means anything. So the solution, what I propose, what works for us, is we've got this external database, and we sync the pointers, basically our key value pairs, out of our systems to this third-party database, take the production snapshot, bring it down, and then sync those pointers back in to make that production cut basically work again. So our modern integrated system is hooked into a lot of different platforms. We've got these pointers into, let's say, our payment processing system, our content management system, e-commerce. We might have invoices that point to an accounting system, all different kinds of systems. When those pointers are lost, the integrations break. So why would we want production data? Why would we want this in, let's say, our staging environment or our development environment? Let's say we're building new functionality, and we want to have this historical data that would help us build out, let's say, new reports or new workflow. Or we've got bugs that we're trying to fix, and in production we've got this long history, with all these different edge cases that we would normally, for us to create in our dev environment, it would be really hard to. There would be a lot of time focused on building that information. So, production systems, they just generate these massive amounts of data that it's really, really beneficial for us as developers to be able to use. So yeah, like I said before, when if we pull a snapshot down and we lay it down, those pointers, they're invalid. So here's our proposed solution. What we have is what we call the key value sync database, and it's really just a data store that you're accessing outside of your existing Rails application. And so we take production, we can sync our production values for, let's say, customer IDs to an e-commerce app. We'd sync the customer IDs down. We could sync the customer IDs in and out of staging, or in and out of all of our developers' development regions, so that when we go and lay down, if we take a cut of production, we can bring those keys back over. And so this can be used for more than just refreshing, your foreign keys or your pointers, right? This actually could be used for scrubbing data. It could be used for syncing passwords, or this concept could be used for middleware for real-time integration between your production and, let's say, your staging, or if you wanted to have maybe a reporting system that could compare values of keys across your regions. This kind of concept, this middle layer that holds these integration points, could be used for just that. So I'm going to go into an example here. We integrate with a payment provider called Stripe. They're one of the biggest industry-leading payment providers out there right now. And And so here's an example of what one of the keys would look like, right? So this is an example of a Stripe dashboard. It has, it's got an example of a customer I created here, Johnny Customer. And here's their unique identifier, right? Which is this CUS underscore, like looks like part of a GUID. So that's in the staging region. So in our dev region, in my local dev, I created Johnny Customer as well. And you can see that the keys are different because they're pointing at two different instances. I've got my development site, my development Rails environment. I've got a development instance of Stripe. I've got a staging site and a staging instance of Stripe. And they're operating completely autonomously, but the same code base is running. So when we're doing invoicing or things like that, I can do invoice testing on my development region. I can do invoice testing on staging. And their subscriptions and things like that remain current in both. So assuming we've created Johnny Customer in each environment, right? We can see we've got different customer IDs across all the regions. My 3 developers all have 3 different customer IDs, staging, production, because they're all different instances. So how do we link these? We're going to go into the actual kind of implementation here. So this is the process. We take the backup of production, and then we take from staging, and we run a task to go ahead and export the key value pairs. So we do this with a rake task. After hearing this last talk, we might be doing this in Crystal soon. But currently we do this with a Ruby rake task, and it brings the keys down. And so we do this for, let's say, our customers or invoices. We have subscriptions, anything. This is just a Stripe environment, but for any other application as well. So once we do that, then we bring the cut of production over to staging. Now this database is already, for us, we scrub the data. We've got some personal information that we need to get rid of, things like that. But so we take it and we lay that down on staging, and then we import those keys back with the same task. And we can do that basically for the development region as well. And I do this probably once a month. I refresh staging, refresh my environment. The rest of my team does. It keeps us current. It keeps us working on, basically, we do 3 week, 1 month cycles. Keeps all those going. So here's an example of what this, what would this key value sync database look like? In this example, it's actually kind of scaled down. But we've got a connection table, which really just holds the host name and the database name. This is going to be a unique connection per instance. So my dev region is going to have 1 connection in this table. The staging region is going to have, depending upon the database, is going to have one connection. And then we link this key values table to that. So this has basically the information that we're trying to sync. It's a basic key value pair. We've got the table name from our source database that we're going to be storing. We have the key column and the key value. This is the information that we want to save and retrieve. And then the ID columns. And so in this example, I've got like 6 columns defined. So you can create compound keys if you want. If you have multiple things that create your unique identifier on your table. If you wanted to extrapolate this out, this could be the ID columns could be normalized. They could be brought out into other child tables. But for the sake of this example, they're just kind of listed here. So one of the problems that we have in the Active Record world, though, is how do we connect to an external database, right? How do we get outside of our current Rails environment? So Active Record gives us this. Active Record gives us this in the right off of the Active Record base class, right? So the established connection method gives us this. And so what we do is we can give it another base connection property. And so in this example, we've got our own class, which we call keyValueSyncBase. And it's just an abstract class. And all it really does is it says, connect me to this other data source. So any other class that uses this, it inherits from this, will be able to connect to that other data source too. So we can create new models, and all of those can talk to any other database that's not our current primary Rails database. So here's a look at what we've got is basically the connection object. And this is this is the model for that connection object that we just looked at in that slide a few slides ago. And it really doesn't have much. You can see that it inherits from keyValueBase. And it has one method on it called Derived connection. And so if you give this no parameters, and you call this from the command line, this is going to connect with your existing Rails environment. It's going to create a connection in the keyValueSync database with your instance. If you give it a source database name, we could have that connect, and it would pull that connection that you're looking for. So if I'm local and I want to connect to my staging instance, and I want to see what my staging key value pairs are for this table, for this customer, I could give it the staging database name, and it would go ahead and it would be able to, that would be the active connection. I could pull and say, okay, Johnny customer has this value staging right now. And I know that, let's say production has this value. And so I can go ahead and I can compare those. I can do information with those. I can do things with those. So this is just a quick console example of just getting that connection, just seeing that derived connection work. But you'll see I just set dev connection equal to keyValueSync connection.derived connection. That's a class method, so it's going to go ahead, it's going to get me a new connection object and hand it back to me. And you'll see here, my connection ID is 54. It knows if I had one already, it got it for me. If I didn't have one, it created one for me. So I don't really have to think about, do I need to create one or not? Derived connection is just going to get that for me and hand it to me. This is the database name that I'm working with at the time, dev 2017-0208. But it just knows. And so if I handed it dev 2017-0108, it would hand me the connection from then, and it would get me the key value of that database at that time. And here's just a SQL instance, just to show you, this is the record that I have in my database in the connections table for this implementation. All right, so next up we're going to actually look at a little bit on actually creating the key values. This is the data that we care about, that we're syncing to and from. So this is the Johnny customer I just showed you in the previous slides that I've got. And I want to go ahead and sync this data out. I want to create this key value. Let's see how difficult is this with this implementation. So I've got the email as my key. This is going to be my ID value, what I'm going to look this person up by. And then the Stripe customer ID. This is the piece of information that I want to sync out and that I want to get back in. So as before, I've got dev connection. I'm creating this connection. And then I'm saying new key value equals dev connection.keyValues.new. So since the connection object and the key value object has a has-many relationship, I can just spin up and say, give me a new one. And it will it'll do that. And so here is an instantiated empty key value. It's got the connection ID filled in already. This hasn't been persisted to the database, but it has basically the table representation that I had shown you. And so what we're going to do with this is we want to fill in these pieces of information tell it what keys, what values we want to save. So here we go. We have new key value, and we set the attributes. I'm going to set the table name to customers. I'm going to set the key column to Stripe customer ID. I'm going to set the key value equal to this unique identifier that they've given us. And then I actually need to go and I need to set the ID values too. How are we going to look this up? Well, I'm going to look it up with the ID column. Since it's a 6-element array that I've got defined on this, I'll start with ID column 0. So the ID column we're going to use is email. And the ID value is going to be jcustomer@test.com. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this. And when I save it, it saves it right into the key values table. We happen to have paper trail on our stuff, so it inserts it into the version table too. But it's just that easy, right? We set some fields, go save, and since we've got this connection and this key values collection, we can query these too. We can go ahead and query the key values by just saying, here's my active connection. I'm connected to staging. Go look me up on the customers table by the email field with this email address and give me all the key values for this record. I may have saved not just the customer ID, I may have saved, let's say, the last name. I don't know why I would, but I could. Or if there's other systems that we integrate with, we can pull all those different values back just through this one quick little mechanism in this external system. So now we've seen how we export from the connection object. Let's take a look at how we do the, and that we can import. Yeah, we've seen how we do the export. We've seen how we do the restore process. And we can import it back. So like I said, we do this. You could do this on a one-on basis. You could add this as a callback to your models. It would probably slow things down a little, but you could add it as a callback. Or, like I said, we do it as a rake task, and it works for us for our implementation. Because this used to take us, if we were regenerating our data, this would take us a week to do, and then we would still have we'd have to create new subscriptions, or we would lose the monthly flow of things. So, just in conclusion, like I said, integrated systems, they're kind of hard to debug. And if we can get, the production data down into our region, it makes things, it makes our jobs a lot easier. Like I said, this could be, it takes a lot of headache out of the equation. This is what works for us, and maybe it will work for you guys too. I've got a little bit of time for Q&A, if there are any questions.
How do you scrub production data?
So for scrubbing production data,
what was the question?
The question was, how do we scrub our production data? And so the rake task that we have to do this process, what it also does is we've got certain key values that we've identified, and we go ahead and we either encrypt them or we set them to some, we blank them out, really, if we're coming from it. So we have no need to know what, we don't keep credit card information, but there's certain fields that we have no need in our staging regions, but some other things that we scrub. We scrub email address. We don't need the real email addresses in staging. We scrub addresses, phone numbers, those kinds of things. There was another one?
How long does the sync process take?
How long does the sync process take? So, let's see. So, we're currently syncing, we've got, I'd say it takes about 20 minutes, and we've got maybe probably 9 fields working across maybe 3 million records, 4 million records. All right. Well, thank you very much.